Hold on to your butts. I'm about to heap a load of praise on a Pixar movie. Yes, with every fandom, there are fans who will never admit when what they love does something wrong, right? And Pixar certainly has its Pixarites, right? But I've never been one of them, and I was in fact one of the first people to call them out on their blatant emotional manipulation. Like, story was second, making you cry was first. But over the past few years, a lot of people have come around and been like, you were right, Grace. Pixar is most interested in making me cry. So I've had like a love-hate relationship with the studio over the past few years, and when I went in to see Onward, my expectations were not high. Despite, it's weird. There are a lot of movies coming out right now that are very poorly advertised that you're like, no way that's good. And then you see it and you're like, wow, that's amazing. Hollywood's doing the work, but there's a disjoint because people aren't going to see it. I hope, with some of these movies, the jury is still out, but we'll see. But I love this movie. All right, so Onward, of course, is about magic. And speaking of magic, Onward recaptures the original Pixar magic that made the animation studio an innovator in the industry. And so obviously the future of animation that Disney held Toy Story 2 hostage in order to force Pixar to agree to be acquired. Oh, Hollywood, it all turned out great. Side note, I want to be fair though, I also really enjoyed Coco, which was just a few years ago. So the argument that many have made that Pixar needs to keep making original films as well as sequels is hard to argue with at this point. I mean, the sequels are good. Some of them are very good, but they don't blow you away like the originals. And this movie blew me away. I was like, oh my God, the feels! It was amazing. Dan Scanlon, by the way, speaking of bad Pixar sequels, he's behind Monsters University, probably the worst, or one of the worst Pixar movies ever made. And then he goes and makes this? I mean, part of it, they say write what you know, and this is a very personal movie for Dan Scanlon because his own father passed away before he could have any memories of him. And so I think that really maybe makes this more authentic as a story and what Dan Scanlon wanted to say, and boy, does he say it. But another important lesson to get from this movie, not the movie itself, but the making of the movie, is that you should always hear someone out, especially if you're a development executive, because you never know where a good idea might be coming from. Like they were like, hey, the guy from Monsters University who has another idea for a movie, you would think you'd be like, I'll tell him I'm busy. But that would be wrong, because this is phenomenal. All right, so anyway, something else that set Pixar apart in the early days from other animation studios was that it produced animation for adults. I mean, sure, kids could watch. These are colorful and cute animated movies, but they were really for adults. Like when my family went to see Finding Nemo in the days before assigned seating, we were scouring the very crowded theater for 4 seats together. And it struck me as we did this that the theater was mostly full of adults without kids. And it's something that I remember vividly to this day. I can see this one image of the theater. And I have to say, it really was nice for me to see that adults were taking an animated movie so seriously. I thought that was great. I mean, that happened a little bit with the Disney Renaissance too, with adults going, although I had no idea what was in store for taking the things I love seriously with comic book movies. That was so great. It still is great. Animation, I think, is hit a little bit of a rough patch. But I hope that, I don't know if anyone's going to see Onward, but Onward should fix that rough patch if there was any justice in the world. All right, so back to Onward. Onward is probably Pixar's, interestingly enough, most adult-oriented film yet. There were 2 little kids behind me at the press screening, and they sure talked a lot before the movie started, terrifying the rest of us, and they would talk through the entire film. The little girl was kicking my seat. I was like, don't say anything. She's excited to see the movie. She stopped, and both she and her brother actually stopped talking and watched the movie very quietly. I mean, occasionally they, for instance, one character came home and was like, Mom? And the kid was like, where's his mom? And everyone laughed and thought it was cute. Because, they were engaged. Occasionally they would be like, oh, unicorn, mermaid. But, they seem to be watching it. But, despite the fact that it held their attention, it's hard for me to believe that they could appreciate and understand the very complex adult lessons of the film. I mean, and there's a lot. It's not just one. dealing with the too soon loss of a loved one. Oh, we'll talk about the sadness in a moment. How fear can ruin your life. I thought that was incredibly well explored through multiple characters. I loved that. That was a lot of the big takeaways for me. And on that note, how scary it is to learn to drive. One of my favorite lines in the movie is when Barley tells Ian to merge. That might not sound like it's great, but I don't want to ruin it for you. You're going to love it. Plus the complex emotions we have towards the people in our lives. And then also, this was a great one. By the way, that last one is so big, but I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to give anything away. But also how people and society itself can be tempted to take the easy way out instead of challenging ourselves. Oh, I loved that one too. But as you can see, I'm an adult now, so I did appreciate and understand all the nuances of this film. I loved it. I thought it was great. And again, it's pretty big of me to like the movie so much. It's a big deal because I've been upset with Pixar over the last few years, and I felt they've been emotionally manipulating audiences. I was like, just resurrecting the bottom half of the dad, as I said in my trailer reactions, I was like, how could you be so cruel? But having seen the film, it actually all makes sense. Now, yes, Onward made me cry. Like tears streaming down my face in the theater. I was blubbering. It was bad. Take tissues. But I was not angry because I felt it was done organically. I thought it served the story and the messages of the film. And I did wonder if maybe the movie was unnecessarily sad. I was like, did you have to go all the way there? But then the more I thought about it, the more I felt that having one day with their father at stake raises the stakes, as it would be hard for anything else to do. And also, it organically leads to, it sets the characters on a path to some amazing personal revelations. It really is a journey. It's a quest. And that blew me away. And I didn't see it coming, but when it did come, it fit together beautifully. Just as it dawned on the characters, I was like, oh my God. Also, again, while having only the bottom half of their dad seems quite cruel at first, the reality, and we were all wondering also how the movie would deal with this, is that there is no spell to bring back loved ones from the dead, even for just 24 hours. And I think this film actually finds very clever ways to honor that, even in a magical setting. And that includes, part of that is resurrecting the bottom half of their dad. Do they ever get to see the top half? I'm not telling you. You'll have to see the movie. But again, overall, I was very impressed with how responsibly this emotional landmine field was traversed. There is magic in this movie, though. Quite a bit of magic. I loved it! And to see it done in a realistic setting, the suburbs, made you feel that maybe you could wield magic, too. I was like, where do I get me one of those staffs? It was so cool. I mean, with all the superpowered movies and TV shows that are out there right now, I'm like, maybe magic is the next big thing. Because it was fun to watch. There's one scene at the end where for a brief shining moment, Ian really uses his wizard powers. And I was like, I hope enough people see this so I get a damn sequel. I need a sequel! And I think Disney is worried about people seeing this movie as well, as they should be. Again, they haven't done a great job advertising it. The review embargo is lifting 2 weeks early, and next Saturday at 3 p.m. there are advanced screenings across the country here in the United States to try and get the word out. Disney never does that. I think the only times I've recently seen that done are How to Train Your Dragon 3 and Aquaman. They're like really trying to get the word out on this, and I think it could work because people are going to, although I feel some people are just not going to believe it because the advertising was so bad. But I feel Disney's pain in that regard because having now seen Onward, it's a very difficult film to promote because it's full of surprises that I think are best discovered in the theater. The only thing I feel they should have highlighted more is that, well, actually really even shown, I don't think it was really shown at all in the advertisement, is that Barley is really into a Dungeons and Dragons type game. Only in this world, that game is based on actual history, making Barley a great guide to introduce his brother to the world of magic and quests as they set off on one. That was really clever. I thought that was, and particularly considering when people like Dungeons and Dragons, this idea that what if it was based on real stuff was really cool. And I think that, the ad campaign for this movie should have done that. Basically, it should have been pitched as suburban Lord of the Rings. And that sounds really cool, and it's executed flawlessly. And Disney just didn't get that across in their ad campaign, unfortunately. So I'm trying the best I can here. The animation, of course, couldn't be better, with Pixar once again delivering settings that could almost be live action. You're like, that tape deck looks real. Oh, here comes the cartoon finger to press the play button. And the character work, speaking of those cartoon characters, is both nuanced and hilarious. There is a drunk driver gag, very responsibly done, don't worry, that is one of the best bits of physical comedy I've ever seen. My audience roared with laughter. So funny. Tom Holland and Chris Pratt are both in top form here, each exhibiting the qualities that have made them fan favorite movie stars. Like, wow, like if you like Tom Holland and Chris Pratt, you will like them here because they are at their absolute best. Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Octavia Spencer also get a surprising amount of screen time. And on that note, I would like to add that while this movie's lead characters are Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, the movie actually is incredibly inclusive. Not only did Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Octavia Spencer have great roles for female characters, I love that the mom was not sidelined in the film. I thought that was incredible to see. But Lena Waithe has a cameo as a lesbian police officer who talks about her girlfriend. Now, some of you have been like, could they cut it out for foreign audiences? And unfortunately, they could change it in the dub. But I think it's a really important step forward, especially, from, the blink and you miss it representation and, Finding Dory. But here, this is an actual line. It's an actual character, defined character, who's part of the action, part of the group. I mean, a lot of different ethnic groups are also represented in this movie. For instance, at the beginning of the film, Ian runs into one of his father's old college classmates who's clearly Latino. And here's the best part. This is never highlighted. The movie never pats itself on the back and says, oh, don't you think this is great? These characters all just simply coexist in the same community, and it is really beautiful to see. Sadly, that might be the most fairy tale part of Onward, but it's also the part that we have the best chance of actually making a reality. This is what we want to see out of Hollywood. Not scolding audiences or trying to push them to do things, but just presenting the world as it could be. And you see how great it is, and you say, yeah, let's do that. I thought it was wonderful. And so just so much stuff out of here. This is great. I mean, go with Pixar on this quest. I got so much out of this movie. Not only as a piece of entertainment, but also in terms of so many life messages. It's just a whole spell book of life messages. By the way, I want that spell book in the movie. And it's cool little illustrations in it. I was like, and they show it just briefly, but I was like, but it's like a how-to book of magic with like little diagrams and things with like Disney style drawing. And I was like, you're going to publish this, right? Because I'd like to buy it. One thing I will say, because I think it's so important, is that I liked the idea that you could only do magic in this world if you had self-confidence. And I thought that was really great, because you can really do magic in your own life if you have self-confidence too. See how great this movie is? Go see it. All right, so that's my review of Onward. Share your own thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.